just finished reading the two-issue miniseries Friday the 13th Pamela's Tale, which was published in 2007 by Wildstorm, which is a DC imprint. It is written by Mark Andrejo, and art is by Sean Mall. The issue basically takes place, well, the first issue starts pretty much near the beginning of the original Friday the 13th movie, where a girl named Annie is being picked up as a hitchhiker by a woman named Pamela on her way to be a camp counselor at Camp Crystal Lake, except here it's revealed that Pamela basically just starts telling Annie her life story during this point, and most of the story here is in flashback, with occasional moments where it goes back to the present day. Basically, the first thing that stuck out to me, just a little detail, nothing significant, just a continuity error. When it begins, it says it's Friday, June 13th, 1980, which in real life was a Friday, but in the movie itself, it just says present day, and the movie was released in 1980, which is where that probably came from, but later films and dating and whatnot actually dates those events to 1979, not 1980, but that's not really a big deal. During the flashbacks, it starts in 1947, showing Pamela as a wife in sort of a trailer park, and her husband just very abusive, very masculine, beats her up, and a lot of domestic violence. And turns out she's pregnant, but she hasn't told her husband yet. So, it's very kind of typical, is what you'd expect from a horror title like this. The typical domestic violence sort of background. One thing that really stuck out to me as strange is that she talks to herself in a sort of psychotic way from the perspective of Jason, just like in the movie. But I always figured that after Jason drowned, that she started to go crazy, and that's what led her down that path. And it seems really weird that she would already be doing stuff like that long beforehand. So it makes me wonder what made her go like that. Did she just suddenly start going crazy in childhood, or was it the domestic violence? It's not really fleshed out, and honestly, I would have found it way more interesting if simply Jason's death would have led her to start doing this. Anyway, so she starts to go crazy and ends up killing her husband, and yada, yada, yada. The first issue ends with the birth of Jason, and the second issue picks up, yet again, it starts in the present day and shows the murder of Annie in her car, just like what happened in the movie. And in a sort of creepy way, which I actually like, she continues telling her story to the corpse of Annie. But the actual flashback parts aren't that interesting, especially in the second issue. It just shows Jason already having signs of sort of being a serial killer and having psychopathic tendencies at a really young age. He kills dogs and cats early on, which is a very typical sign in real life. But I didn't really enjoy that either, to be honest. The movies always gave me the intention that he was mentally disabled, but he didn't actually get those tendencies until later on in life because of the death of his mother, which yet again I would have found more interesting than if he just grew up the typical way like that the comic portrays. Anyway, basically a lot of the issues just slightly more detailed version of the background events from the first movie in the 1950s of Jason hanging out, going to the camp counselors deciding to go have sex, with Jason drowning, and then it flashes forward again and simply shows some more events from the original film. Honestly, the story is pretty pointless in these two issues here, this miniseries. Basically, all the important background information is already presented in the film itself, and honestly, in a more interesting and believable way, and in much less time. This is simply more detailed and retelling of the same events you already know, so it's really not worth it. It doesn't add anything you'd really want to know, unless I guess you're a really hardcore Friday the 13th fan, but even then, it just screws up the details. I was pretty bored during the reading of this. I was not surprised by any of the events. Very predictable. Didn't tell me anything. On the plus side, I did enjoy the art. It looks a little sketchy, but also detailed enough, and it just works really well. I could see it worked in a lot of different genres, and I did like the art a lot. But I find that the story is the most important thing in a comic book, so I would honestly have to give the first issue a 3 out of 10, and the second issue a 4 out of 10. Not really worth the effort, below average. Only check it out if you're a really hardcore Friday the 13th fan.